The Irish perspective, yes, Italy, Ireland, 1626.
Yeah.
That's not 60 points.
Well, it's actually, I made the point during the game, which has now been picked up on because Shane Horgan made the point in post-match analysis, that it looked very similar, and I touched on it earlier in the show, to the 2007 World Cup.
Yeah.
In the sense that, and like for like World Cups for non-Irish fans is just World Cups, you know, some go good, some go bad. But like the sort of over dramatic Irish way of thinking about the world, you know, we really do live our failures, and they cut to the bone, and it's very much like, for any Irish rugby fan, it's very much a scar that's worn, and it came from a place of such optimism and such bullishness going into a tournament with, you know, Brian O'Driscoll's and Ronan O'Gara's and Paul O'Connell's and Dennis Hickey's and Shane Horgan's and so many great players, and then they showed up in that tournament and were just abysmal from minute one. But the reason that the picture from the Italy game was so similar was that the team were already out of form. We knew that. They had time to sort of get it right, and then they weren't, and they were on the field visibly frustrated with one another, with referees, with everything around them, just getting more and more angry and verbalizing that anger. Their body language was horrendous. All of them were just all over the place. There wasn't a lot of leadership coming from them, and that was very similar to 2007. I mean, in 07 they started with a game against Namibia where they had won it. I think, you know, like a game against Namibia, they got the bonus point, I think, just or maybe they didn't even. They won it like 32 to 17 or something like that against Namibia for one of the top sides in the world, and it was like a bit of a scare. And then everyone's like, okay, well, look, they've got a week, they got another game against one of the tier 2 teams in Georgia where they're gonna, you know, they'll get it right, their chance to get the patterns together, ease into the tournament. And then they had that scare against Georgia where they were down, and Georgia actually crossed the line. They won it 14 to 10, and Georgia crossed the line in the last play and got held up, and that was the game. And again, in that game, there was such, you know, they were trying things and they weren't coming off, and they were getting biting at one another all the time, looking full of frustration. And then, you know, it was like, okay, well, we're still in the tournament, you know, we got that French game, and they were actually, they got stuffed by France, but they were actually in the tournament going into the last weekend as well. When they lost to Argentina. But if they got a bonus point win against Argentina, they probably would have got through out of the group, right? But it didn't happen because nothing was right from minute one, and no matter how much they worked at it, and
seemingly they worked quite hard, overtrained a little as well for some of the chat.
But that's the thing. It's like they're just, right now the shape is very similar. They got stunned by England, and they were frustrated last week against Scotland. They looked a picture of upset against Italy, and it was just there was just this sense of impending, you know, frustration, and it takes a similar shape in the sense that it's still a win, we're still in it, but you know, and then we could still be in it going into the last weekend. But right now it doesn't look like it doesn't look like they're going to fix it the normal way, to me, in terms of where their mindset is. I mean, I think the worst thing that could do for these players right now is one of those Monday review sessions where everything gets torn asunder, and we look at this error and this error and this error, and we call out you and you, and you know, it ends up being a disciplinary thing. They look like they're not shorn of anything, really. They look like they're wearing baggage all over them. And it's a very troubling picture. If you're an Irish fan, it's just a very familiar and troubling picture right now. And that 07 World Cup catastrophe put them basically in a year-long funk. They had to lose the coach and a couple of personnel before they got any mojo back. So
hopefully,
like, listen. I think it's there's nuggets of it in the body language. I don't think it's the whole picture, but I think like it's like right now they're in actually a very dangerous place. I think they look all kinds of wrong, and there's rugby related reasons as well that we'll get into. But it's just a troubling picture for me at the moment. Sure. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, it's definitely an argument. I definitely see. There's a bit more it's a fragmented feel where last year it was like it was the green machine. It was like all for one, everyone knowing their jobs, everyone kind of multi-jobbing but also micro-jobbing, and everyone buying into it while it's working. It's much easier to be that process driven, but when it's slightly off, the fact that the processes aren't working means you're going to throw blame either way, probably left or right of you while you're on the pitch. But it's also they're not helped by not having the freedom to express themselves in terms of how they actually play the game a lot of the time. Some certain players, particularly backline, just are very functional in this setup, and when it's not working, therefore there's very little scope for it to change on the fly, because how could it? Because we're just going to keep doing the same thing.
The answer is one guy, and that's Jacob Stockdale.
Yeah,
he's the only guy in the Irish backline who can make something happen from nothing.
Yeah,
who doesn't actually necessarily have to be put into a giant hole to run through something. He can actually step a guy. He can show a bit of hustle. He can just up and decide to run a tracking line that he sees. And that the outside of that, everything is like a functional cog in there. And it's definitely one of a few concerns, and it reveals itself in what we do with the ball. Yeah, I mean, one of the things from a rugby perspective that we've spoken about for Ireland is like the NFL comparison, where Sexton's your quarterback, Joe Schmidt is your so he's calling the plays on the fly, but Joe Schmidt is your sort of coach, and he's the guy who's putting all the plays together, and Sexton's the quarterback through which he drives them, and everyone else is just running the play and the formation that's instructed of them. And it's just within that context, it's a very interesting way. There's loads of cool NFL rugby comparisons and different teams who do things different ways. Like I would say that France would be the anti-NFL establishment in rugby. Like, they had nothing to do with it, and no comparisons to be made. But like, for an NFL side to have basically as limited an offensive playbook as Ireland have, strikes me as a bit shocking. Like, if that's the way you want to go about things, like it seems to me like it was slight different variations of similar formations all around Sexton with 2, 3, 4 options in a very narrow space. And teams eventually are just going to pack that space and figure it out, and you're starting to see that happen. And one of the things that teams have figured out is that within that context, it's just about not getting Johnny on the floor, and things are disrupted for at least a phase. And that's such a problem with just not having that second distributor option. And like you were saying, having Bundy Aki there and asking him to do that is not the same as putting someone like Carberry in there. They had Rob Kearney in a distribution role for part of that game.
Yeah, he slotted in a second screen at one point, and it was just like, but he's not a great passer of a football, so why would you do it? Like, I just don't know. Like,
to be fair to Robbie, actually made the play.
He did
in that context. He made a little quick pass, but it's not. Again, it's just not his game.
No, it's not. Like, it's one that's going to keep recurring, because it feels like we're very, very, very structured, but also just too narrow. And it's it's not just that either. You were making the good point that, like, because we're such a possession based team, everyone's running a support line, being like, support the guy who's about to go to the floor so that we can pack that breakdown, get quick ball from that, and then go again. But no one is offloading, and not to like, it's not that no one's looking, because during at the game of the weekend, Ty Furlong was winning contacts, getting a hand free, looking left and right, but there's no one there.
He got one away, I think.
He got one.
Every contact he was
looking for it, and it's just no one running that line.
Which they're running very pessimistic, I would say, tracking runs, in the sense that, like, what Joe wants from his players, because Ireland basically are a team that like to put 40 phases together, like to and 20 phases in most sets. They want, they want to tire the defence out and make them win tackles, and if you want to do that, ball retention is at a premium. That's what you have to do. That matters more than anything else. It's your fundamentals. So what Joe wants is the assurance that, if we are stuck behind the game line, the forwards need to be there. We need to be able to make sure that we have the ball again, so we can go again. But what that's being done now at the expense of, when we do make a line break, like Keith Earls did, and on a couple of occasions, I think we did break through, and there was just the wide shot or the overhead shot reveals it so perfectly that there's just no Irish player on this field expecting his team to make a line break, and you see virtually every other top tier nation turn those into tries, because your scrummy's running an inside angle, or your centres is picked it up and he's tracking, or your 10 is following the ball and he's after it, and it's just none of it. There's absolutely none of it. So when Ireland do break through, they just gain the amount of meters that the guy who breaks through runs, rather than linking,
unless it's Stockdale, because Stockdale will chip it over the top and gather and score a try.
That's it. Like, and the two Stockdale tries, like, for examples, like Keith Earls had a couple of line breaks, and he obviously, isn't Stockdale, so he didn't do anything wrong, but he wasn't able to turn them into tries because he's not Stockdale. But Stockdale, when he was put into that space in the All Blacks game, he just had to make it all happen.
Yeah.
He just didn't actually have that much support. And the same is true in the Scotland game when he was put into that hole. I mean, if you take a wide view of it, there's no one within an ass's roar of him, and he has 3 Scots to beat, and he just beats them with a bit of gas and a bit of hustle.
Yeah.
But that's like, it's a recurring thing, and it's one of the rugby, like, for all of the psychology talk and the throwbacks to 12 years ago. It's a very rugby related problem. That's just another type of try that you don't see Ireland score.
Yeah.
That's very common, like club rugby, test rugby, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Tier 2, Tier 1, turning line breaks into tries is something that a lot of coaches value that Ireland just don't do.
Kick return is another one.
Kick return is another one.
And it's a sacrifice you make when you pick Rob Kearney for defensive surety, which he surely gives in this particular defensive system, which demands a lot of your backfield coverage, which means you have to have him in there.
He's elite,
basically.
like you just, Stockdale's great, and Stockdale's a good man off kick return, and you'd like to see it's like Keith Earls got a lot of praise at the weekend. He had to move into centre, attacked quite, he attacked with a bit of pace and a bit of energy.
Found his try well.
Defended pretty loosely.
From the 13 channel, yeah.
Yeah,
Hayward,
it's not his area.
Hayward made a mug of him at one point, I remember.
That's right.
Yeah.
And but for me, and this is sort of sacrilege in a lot of Irish things, like for me, I think you got it. Like, that's a jersey that you got to do something with when you've Rob Kearney at fullback, and right now Keith Earls just isn't it. He's not a game breaker. He's not someone who's going to make something happen. And you got to give other younger guys a go at it.
It's like, what's a winger for?
Yeah.
That's the question we always ask with it, like, because it seems to be something that we routinely forget and then remember in an Ireland jersey, like, because Tommy Bowe was a surefire starter, but then in the moments that he was injured or unavailable, you were seeing wings occupied by Dave Kearney and Andrew Trimble, and it's like, they're very fine players, and I have a lot of respect for them. It's like, they're not game breakers at all, and like, you're looking at all the top teams and who they got on the wing. Like, Wales have your George Norths, England have your Johnny Mays, there's Rico Ioane, and there's all kinds of like glorious men who you can just give the ball to with 15 yards of space and one man in front of him. And that's the whole, it's not even manufacturing a 2-on-1, it's a 1-on-1.
Yeah.
And you're backing your winger to turn that into a try more often than not. And like, Ireland just do not do that. They value things like defensive coverage and stuff. And like, this is why I'm pretty sure Adam Byrne is out of the picture, because he has had a few dodgy defensive moments in a Leinster shirt that I've borne witness to. He's not the finished article, but I'm just thinking, like, if we're going to be exclusively box kick exiting, why not have him there?
Yeah,
he is the best we have at that exact skill.
I agree with that point, but I think that we absolutely shouldn't be exclusively box kick exiting.
That's the more pertinent point.
And that is the more pertinent point, because teams are like, and you saw England do it to just the embarrassment of Joe, really, in the sense that they took a restart and they knew everything that was going to happen from the moment they kicked it off to that corner. They knew Murray was going to kick it out, and like, it's not, Ireland under Schmidt haven't always been like that, in the sense that one of the pictures that you used to see is Sexton lining up, like if we got a penalty in our own 22, Sexton's lining up the long kick, which he would usually take on, but about 20% of the time he'd just tap and go and flash it out left and see what's on. Like, that's something.
There's a little bit less adventure in what we're doing, for sure, but that's probably a lack of confidence too. The other thing that's not helping with that is that Conor Murray is not playing well, and like, that whole game is really built around the exceptional nature of Conor Murray's form over the last few years, whereby, like, yes, we're going to do it, but there's still nothing you can do about it, because the kicks are so pinpoint, and so the hang time is such that it's still not even a 50-50, because we're kind of on the offense, because you've sometimes arrived too early, or you're too stationary, whereas the attacking wingers arriving just in time to get a good leap. That kind of stuff isn't happening anymore, because Murray's slightly off the pace. His passing isn't very crisp at all either, which is leading to the forward runners being checked before they can kind of put on a bit of footwork or try and win the gain line, which is where we want to attack.
I've heard he actually came out with an interview. I wish I could remember who the interview was with. I think it was in the Irish Times on Saturday, the day before the game, and was talking about the fact that he's still very much struggling with a shoulder injury, which is causing him to lose a bit of muscle mass on his left side. And
that's not good.
It isn't good. He never actually did get the surgery during all that time he was off.
Oh.
I don't think.
I thought he did.
No, and he's still. I think he's still struggling with it.
Interesting,
And,
but yeah, well, like it's still. We were making the point last week that it's like there's no point in talking about building depth if when it's going as wrong with your starters that you can't yank them out of there and replace them.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
that's the problem. That's all on Joe actually, which is like someone that we like to trust in Joe. We do like to trust in Joe. He's done a lot for this country and for the province of Leinster as well, and he's got pretty much everything right. But he does not use his bench at all in terms of, like, particularly the backs. Like, he just doesn't change things with them. It's too reliant on Murray Sexton, which is a problem in and of itself because it's now getting figured out and we're a bit too narrow. So it shouldn't be all that reliant on those two anyway. But the fact that when they're playing poorly, and it's like Sexton's form is being called into question, I actually don't think he's been doing too badly. I just don't think we've been getting that much service or purchase go forward anyway, and off nine we've been a little bit sloppy, but Murray has been poor consistently every game, and it's like despite that Cooney's only had around 15 minutes of game time in this whole tournament, and that's just surely wrong.
It is, and it's the truth of Ireland definitely lies somewhere between what you saw against Italy at the weekend and what you saw in Dublin against the All Blacks and across last year, and away in Australia and at the Six Nations. But I think it's very fair to talk about what they do with the ball and how they find tries, and just like there's so many things missing. I mean, you talked about kick return, you talked about tracking runs to convert line breaks into tries, and you talk about when they have the ball, where they attack. I mean, I think you give a shout out to Squidge Rugby in an analysis video. He was talking about they only operate within the 2 15-metre channels. Yeah. They don't tend to use the tram line so often, except if it's on like a strike play.
Yeah.
Like
or if Joey Carberry's in there.
But basically they run narrow plays within narrow parts of the pitch. They don't vary it enough. They don't use the full pitch when they're attacking the ball. They don't offload. And your scope for scoring tries within that context basically gets narrowed in to the point where it zooms in on physical dominance or a set piece strike play right off a playbook, and that's those are the two pictures we have. And in terms of scoring tries, it just makes the game a whole lot more difficult. And I don't think if this was to be mentioned perhaps in the New Zealand media, the flipping point that would come off is that it's personnel driven. He's made the game plan for the players he has, and I actually don't think that's true at all. He's not picking certain guys and picking guys who can do functional jobs for him because that's what he feels comfortable doing. And then just another narrow point is like, because the line-out obviously is a whole other kettle of fish.
The Def show.
Sean Cronin's getting a lot of stick, but I was watching a lot of those line-outs and the timing, the timing is so off. I mean, when you're at the back of the line-out, as a couple of them went wrong, Nugget's going to have thrown the ball before you jump, just the way it works, because the ball is going to take a little while to get there. So you're waiting on him to jump. He obviously has to throw it at a reasonable cue, and I don't know whose responsibility it is to sort of get that exactly accurate, or whose responsibility it is right now to call everything. I think it was Quinn Rue at the weekend.
It might have been O'Mahony though.
But it might have been O'Mahony. And then, there was a few times when at the back of the line out, the ball was actually thrown to a reasonable height, but the guy at the back of it was on his way down by the time it got there. Yeah. And that's just really, really sloppy. Yeah. And that's a consistent theme in the absence of Dev. Yeah. But not to defend Cronin too much, who did have a poor game. But I think there's Cronin, there's an argument. You're a player. You play well when you get there. But there's also, not to pile in too much on Dear Joe here, but there's also an argument that a school of thought that there's, from a coach's perspective, there's a sense of trying to get the best out of your players. And it comes to speculation when you guess about why, but Sean Cronin, for basically the entirety of the Joe Schmidt era, has been underwhelming in an Ireland jersey and exceptional in a Leinster jersey. And for whatever reason, Joe's not getting the best out of him, and he's potentially a very elite player who's never delivering in a test jersey. And that may be all down on him, but I don't know. There's so many problems that it's so hard to call us the second best team in the world. Really, it's so difficult.
It's true. Well, it's something that constantly, I'm sure, it grinds the gears of all the Welsh fans who watch, because they can just see so many beautiful ways of playing the game, and Ireland played very ugly. Played in a very ugly way that's very dismissive of things like the kick return try or the line break try, like we're saying. And it's like, how can we be the second best at a game when we don't score all the tries that are available in said game? And that's like, I suppose it's just by consistently doing the job well and winning all those games in a row, which is what happened. Like the rankings are slightly skewed anyway, and there's also the gap has narrowed such that the top 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 teams can kind of take scalps off each other anyway, so it's not that big of a divide. So it's a bit arbitrary, but it's certainly we're in need of it's in need of remedy, because like it's certainly frustrating from a Leinster fan perspective, because there's a little bit too much, I'm going to say Munster, about the way we attack in the backline, because we were criticising Munster's lack of shape in the backline this season, where you're looking at the personnel there and you're thinking these are all elite players. This whole backline is actually pretty much international calibre. Why aren't they linking and scoring a lot of tries? And you're just looking at it, it's like the answer is they just haven't really gotten any shape at all, other than it goes 10, 12, 13 full back winger, and that's just universally what happens. We're going to suck them in and then go wide, and it's like that's not how the game works anymore.
It's rugby from the 70s.
It's crazy to be doing that. And similarly, like Leinster and Connacht also attack with a bit of flair, and Ulster use up the tempo and attack with good variation, but in Ireland they're like nearly not allowed to do so. Like there's very little heads up play from any centres. Whoever's in the centres, it looks like they're trying to do a little kind
Gary
of
Ringrose.
impression of even Gary Ringrose when he's there looks more like Henshaw or Aki than he does Gary Ringrose, whereas in a Leinster jersey he is a fulcrum in attack, and he has license to play a bit of loose heads up play.
The best Gary Ringrose moments outside of the Scotland game last year, where he was able to distribute a bit and played really well, the best Gary Ringrose moments you see in an Ireland jersey is when someone inside him has just screwed up, and then there's a bit of a breaking ball and he can go and pounce on it, and then he can actually make like a few yards and then show just how classy he is. But he very rarely gets played into the game. To be fair to Ireland, I think they do, in terms of their general shape, they've acknowledged that Stockdale's a guy they want to get involved more. Joe doesn't want to shake up the personnel, but he's happy with Stockdale in there, and he acknowledges that Stockdale is a likely source of tries. So they want to get him in space. They want to manipulate space and put him in it, which is good. But I just think they need a bit more of that. In terms of like, these are all very macro problems that we're discussing, and they're not the kind of thing that you fix in the year of a World Cup. Like we're playing in this way,
so we're going to the World Cup in this way.
I just think there's a couple of things. Like there's a couple of things that need improving. I think Keith Earls needs to be replaced with someone like Jordan Larmour, and I'm not sure if it's going to be Larmour, or it could be Conway. There's a couple other guys in the fringes looking to get in there, but I think that 14 jersey needs to be a game breaker like Stockdale is. 2 class wingers, and then you have Rob Kearney as your fulcrum that holds things together defensively, and then when Kearney goes, I really do feel like Carberry's the guy that should come in there, change it up, defend it. Well, that's the thing. These are the little fixes that I think we would like to see that will get the back line firing. And then the only other thing is that right now he has 4 centres that are going to the World Cup, who are Henshaw, Aki, Farrell and Ringrose.
Don't touch the tape.
Sorry. So you've got I think Ringrose is a nail on for the plane, and then of the other 3, I think rather than take all 4 of them, he needs to probably lose one and bring in another distributor, because when Ringrose goes down you still need a bit of dynamism in the centre, and I think that would fix some of the problems that they have. If they always had someone like Addison or Tom Farrell even, there are guys in the fringes who you can make that call and put in there, but it's just little fixes like we're talking almost about reinventing the wheel of Joe's plans, which have delivered such success. Like, there's 2 sides to every coin. The degree to which we batter teams down with the slow play has been very effective, but just to be able to have that little extra would probably be good.
Just an ability to unpick defences, because we don't seem to prioritise or be capable of it. In lieu of the multi-phase, and that's there's times for killer tries and killer plays, and we're one of the slowest teams on the uptake in terms of recognising that. Striking when the iron's hot, we go back into contact, and that even happened a few times on the Australia tour. I remember one great example where it actually ended in a Pocock steal, but it was like when you watch it with the Aussie commentary, it's going like, oh, it's surely on now, and it's cuts back inside straight into Pocock, who's there, who poaches, who steals. And I was like, that was a try, but for that option. It's like, why did we do that?
Even in that game, the second test that we dominated against Australia, they actually got a play at it because they're so good at just sniffing out opportunities that they stayed in touch in a game that they were dominated in, because we couldn't put the squeeze on them.
And that was that happened in, for as much as like last year was the most successful year of Irish history in Irish rugby history. Like, but for that drop goal in France, we had blown that game despite being utterly dominant, but just incapable of finding a try.
So that's the thing. It's like up front, there aren't too many problems really.
No.
You know, they're very good breakdown, very good scrum. They need to fix the line out, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, one or two areas I like to see them offload a bit more, but it's like the long and short of it is that it's the attack. And I think you can fix the attack without doing too much damage to the defence
system as it is,
and the system, and just have a little bit more flair and dynamism. I think that would vastly improve them for sure. But right now it's looking negative in a lot of different ways. It's looking negative in the sense that they just right now, for all of their second in the world, I think you'd have to rank on balance the All Blacks, Wales, South Africa and England as slightly ahead of where they are in terms of just figuring out those problems ahead of a World Cup.
It'd probably make them more likely to win in that World Cup as well. From those teams.
Oh yeah, I would say
just
so.
based on history as well, because we have no form in World Cups to fall back on at all. Thanks for watching the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you want to subscribe, there should be a button up here. Don't forget to give us a like and share with your friends, and please leave comments down below. We love the conversation. Thanks.